YouTube, how's it going? Hope y'all having a good day. This video is gonna be a little bit different from some of my normal content. For those of y'all who have supported me and have been watching me and have been since the beginning, y'all know that primarily my gaming content is Call of Duty Warzone, Halo, Gears of War, a lot of gameplay, a lot of shenanigans, and most recently doing a podcast in relation to gaming and esports. It's a huge passion of mine. It's what got me started here. I got some pretty ambitious goals. But this video was actually inspired, by a few different things. For those of y'all who do know me, again, y'all know I don't keep it a secret. I am a recovered heroin addict, recovered drug addict. I've been sober for 7.5 years. My sobriety date is August 4th of 2013. And one of the things that I've always felt very uneasy for whatever reason about making content around it. I felt that I didn't want to be I didn't want people to donate or give money or anything like out of sympathy or anything like that. I like because this is something that means a whole lot to me, and I can't really tell you the full reason of why I didn't want to do it. And I just felt that I could just do my thing around only gaming content. But the reality is that this this part of me is really one of the only reasons that I'm still alive. And I'll explain what that means is that, I truly believe that I made it through what I went through with heroin addiction, with drug addiction, so that I could help as many people as I possibly could. So the reality is it's, for me, it was pretty selfish to actually not be doing this. It's just, a lot of this is based out of fear. So, want to cut to the chase of what this video is about. I was invited from a show host from a podcast group over in the UK called Drive Time, I believe it is, and they reached out to me and wanted me to be on their show for about 15 to 20 minutes to ask me a few questions about my heroin addiction. Which we get into a little bit. Obviously, we get into in the video, but this is the first time I had really been interviewed. About my story. And although it is condensed, I believe it is extremely valuable. A couple things that we touch on are, where I got started, what it really means, at least from my perspective and my experience to be a drug addict. What were some of the points that led me to, become willing to get help, the points that where I became willing to actually get help, what my life looked like then, and on the flip side, really what it's done for me and really the positives that have come from this. So I really hope you enjoy this. I do plan on doing a lot more around this since this is a major part of my story that I have, left out. So without further ado, let's go and hop right into the show. This is an audio recording only. Right now, it wasn't done on video, but I did want to capture the audio from the web browser during the live show. So that way, folks on YouTube, y'all can view that. I will be, yeah. So let's go ahead and, gonna transition and hop right in.
So we're actually joined by our next guest on the line, Kyle. Good afternoon, Kyle.
Hello, sir. How are you?
No, hi, Kyle. How are you? Thank you for joining us on the Drive Time show.
Fantastic. Thank you for having me on. I really appreciate this.
No. It's a pleasure and a privilege. So, we're talking about addiction on today's show, Kyle. So how and when did you develop, your personal addiction, which is to heroin, unfortunately?
Yeah. So, I mean, I want to kind of keep it. There's a lot to unpack here,
Okay.
but I want to kind of keep it simple, or to keep it, in line with what we're talking about here. Is when it comes to being a drug addict or an alcoholic, I don't think that there's any point. I think that there's a certain period of every person's time where they kind of cross a line, to where kind of what you guys were talking about earlier, where this willpower, becomes non-existent, and we kind of pass into the state where the normal resources don't really kind of cut it, and we just,
the normal cup of coffee is not just going to give you that wake-up call you need.
Exactly. So, I mean, I started, I guess you could call it a career as a drug addict, probably around 16 or 17, and this started off with pot and alcohol. And, it was very mild at a certain point in time. But one thing I noticed was that there was no ramp up period for me. There was no like, I'm just going to try it out here or a little bit there. It was, if I'm being fully transparent, it was, I wasn't doing it one day to now I'm, not only am I smoking weed every day and drinking on the weekends, but I'm also selling, drugs at 17, 18 years old.
Right.
And there was no ramp up period. So I think that, there was a period in my life where I can't tell you what exactly happened to push me over that ledge, but here I am and I can't change it.
Right,
So I think now, to be specific around heroin, it was after this is after my second rehab center. I've been to rehab 4 times. This was after my second one. And, the funny thing about, I guess you can call it funny. I have to laugh at things like this as part of me being healthy. But the interesting part about this is, I had no notion of trying heroin that night. I had it wasn't like in the deck of cards.
Right. So how
and
did
we
it
were
become in the deck of cards?
Yeah. So I'll get to that. We were actually driving to another city to go, like my friends actually, well, my quote unquote friends, my fair weathered friends what they had planned on doing was taking me to a new city. They were actually going to buy heroin themselves, like a lot of it to start selling, but they were just telling me that we were going to be going to a strip club. And that was actually how we got there. And when I realized that we weren't going there and we had picked up the substance, picked up the heroin and we were in the car, it was just like, well, what else am I going to do right now? It was like at that point in time where it was just like, okay, it's 2 a.m. I'm in a city I don't know, and we're in the middle of the ghetto. And what else am I going to do right now? So that was actually how it started. I mean, and I remember, I think this is a valuable thing for some of the listeners is that, I had experience with going through rehab and, understanding a little bit about the mind of drug addiction, or a little bit about myself. And I knew the moment that it entered my system, I actually told myself that I knew this wasn't going to end well. I knew it. I just knew it in my bones. And I actually said that to myself. And I was at that point where I was just ready to drive it till the wheels fell off.
Okay. So you're saying that this was after your second session at rehab, so you're aware of the pitfalls of addiction and substance addiction. So so then I see I suppose the ironic humor in it that you're saying that you've gone and picked not just a class A drug, but what a drug of such potentially kind of like disastrous I suppose psychological and physiological effects. That is the joker in the pack.
Yeah, that's the fascinating piece. And I remember telling myself that like I would never do. I mean, I did it one time a long time ago prior to, and I was so ashamed of myself, and I said I would never get that far. I would never do that, and here I was. And again, very similar to, I want to make a tie to this. A tie to the same story about me when I very first started smoking pot. It was not just like I'm just gonna, I smoked heroin off a tinfoil. That was how I consumed it. And I said, it wasn't just smoking heroin. Now I need money to fund this habit, so I'm going to start selling it. And it was the same pattern. It was the same, like there was no ramp up period. It was just, it's in my body. Let's ride this till the wheels fall off. And I think that's one of the stark differences between people who, I think are experimenting with drugs, who may have been heavy into drugs, versus what an actual drug addict or alcoholic looks like. And I think that's in my experience, and based on the people that I'm friends with here, is a common thread.
So do you think, Kyle, that the heroin addiction led to the any severe damage or long lasting effects that you are still battling with today?
I had to think about this one a little bit. I mean, when it comes to physical damage, no. I was very fortunate to not have any of that. I would say if there was any physical repercussions, it wasn't even from the actual heroin itself. It was from my many days of ecstasy prior to that. I took a lot of MDMA prior to kind of the story, and I remember it ended up having an effect on my urinary tract, where I actually had to try to go to the bathroom. I would have to go to the bathroom, but I would have to sit there and try. And after this experience, the more intoxicated I got, the more that experience happened. And that lasted probably 2 to 3 years into me being sober, but I'd say now it doesn't really have as much of an effect. But it's more, drugs do so much to the body, but they, in my experience, they do more to relationships than anything. I think I was listening a little bit earlier, to you guys in the last couple callers, and it burns a lot of bridges, and you lose your inhibitions. All of those. It doesn't matter how much you love somebody, if they are going to be perceived to be getting in my way of doing what I need to do to feel okay, then it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Like you're all of a sudden that person means nothing. And I'll tell you, this is probably one of the most heart-wrenching part of my stories, was that, and part of what started my journey to getting well. And it kind of it'll sound interesting why it was the journey for me to start getting well, but my family had intervened on me when I was in Colorado, and they just showed up, and at the time I was about 122 pounds, and mind you, I'm 6 foot tall, right? So I was 122 pounds, and I had failed about 8 out of 10 panels out of a drug test, but I'm sitting here telling my mother and my father and the counselors that I'm just fine. That's the scary part about addiction, is that, in my mind, I had drugs in my system, I had money in my wallet, I had a job, and I had a girlfriend, and that was all I needed to be okay. And I will not use explicit language because I'm not sure about the policy on that, but
we'd rather you didn't, actually.
Yeah, exactly. I won't. But, and long story short, I basically told my parents to leave, in a not so nice way. And that was kind of the end of it. And my parents were trying to help. They said, you can either go to rehab, or we're going to take your car and we're going to stop paying for your rent, and we're going to exit your life.
So that was the point whereby you decided to properly, assess yourself and go into rehab again.
No. So that's the interesting part.
Okay.
Is I needed to figure out how, I needed to live my life without the cushion and the support of my family. And I needed to truly let the wheels fall off. So it took about 4 months. And after that, in that 4-month period, I lost about 3 jobs. And we faced an eviction notice, me and my girlfriend at the time. And that was the point where not only externally, but internally, I just felt like the jig was up. I'm just like, okay, maybe I don't know how to do this. Maybe
you weren't in control anymore. Right. Okay.
Yeah. And I don't think I was ever in control, but I think I finally believed it.
No, but I think the thing is, Kyle, from talking to our other guests and the research that we've done, that, when you are in the throes of the addiction, whether it be drugs, social media, alcohol, whatever type of addiction it is, it gives you that, I suppose, that illusion of a better reality. And that maybe in your case, that you were able to control, and that you were in control because you had, I suppose, the semblance of a normal life. You were saying, you had a job, you had money in your pocket, you had a girlfriend, you had a relationship. So, that's what I think addiction gives you. It's a false mammon, really.
Yeah, you're exactly right. And it, to your point, one thing I really loved about the last call is it talks about the void. It talks about this void, and there's nothing that could fix it but more dope, or more heroin. And when people get in the way of that, it's a really big problem. And I think something with me, what I had to realize was that I don't have a heroin problem. I don't have an alcohol problem. Like, I have a me problem, and heroin is the solution.
Right.
So I think that's the most fascinating part about drug addiction and alcoholism. And I say both of those together because it's the same disease. It's just different substances. But that's what the baffling part about it is because I'm sitting here thinking that this is my solution, yet it's destroying my life. But to everyone around me, I have a heroin problem. They don't see that this is my actual solution to live my life. And so I think that's where you get a lot of drug addicts it's comical. We are the only people that will say, look, we can present you a way of life that is infinite and beyond anything you could ever imagine. Or you can continue living the most miserable life that you've ever lived. And we are one of the only people that are just like, let me think about it. Like, let me get back to you on that.
Yeah.
And so to me, that's the most fascinating part, is because it's like, we have some of the greatest abilities to live the most amazing lives, or we can go live and hopefully we die, or hopefully we get somehow, you know what I mean? It just, we're the only people who have, I won't say only, I'll reel that back. Like, we are very few people who actually have to like think about that.
So Carl, throughout this journey that you've been on, and with the highs and lows, what made you then change your ways, and what
was the turning point then?
Yeah, and then from there on, in your routine, in your mindset, in the company that you kept, what were the things that you changed?
Yeah. So I think it was to that last point where we were. So mind you, our trip to go get heroin was about a 3.5-hour round trip each way.
Wow.
And so it was a 7-hour round trip. And
so it's not like popping down to the 7-Eleven then.
No. It was an adventure. It was a journey, and then we
a road trip.
Put it this way: we lived in the beautiful mountains of Colorado, and I'll tell you, the drive back was a lot more pleasant. I'll just tell you that. It was a very
Sorry, we have to join you in a bit of humor there. I can understand.
And I think we need to normalize this stuff for people, especially people who have recovered. And I will get back to the question here shortly, because if you can't laugh at yourself, if you can't enjoy some of the humor of where we've come, like, and whatever the struggle is, then you've never, like, to me, like, then you're not happy. I mean, like, to me, if you have to do that, it's a therapeutic process. Like, some of the things that me and my friends talk about at the dinner table, if we're in public, will make other people turn their heads like, what in the world are they talking about? Like, how can they laugh at things like that? But the turning point for me was, on our little expeditions, was we would normally pick up between 7 and 10 grams of substance. And this last time we were only able to pick up 2 to 2.5, split between 2 people for a week. And none of us had a job after that. So it was just like, once the dope ran out, or we knew the dope was running out, that was, at that point, I think I was 118 pounds and I had no job. We faced an eviction notice, and I was about 6 to 8 grand in debt, and I just said, you know what? I didn't know what I was going to be changing about my life, but I knew my way didn't work. And I think that's one of the most important pieces, is that drug addicts and alcoholics have to, at least for me, I had to try every single way that did not involve God. I had to try every single way, that I knew, in order for me to finally not just know it intellectually. It's great to know things intellectually, but if I don't believe it, it doesn't do anything. It doesn't matter. And so I finally listened to people, and very similar to the last caller, there's different ways to get sober, and there's many different ways for every type of person. My specific way is through the 12 steps. That is my solution to recovery. That is the only way that's actually worked for me, which involves me trusting and relying upon, a creator of my own understanding, and I think that's the most beautiful piece of it, is that the 12 steps aren't the solution. The 12 steps enable me to get in touch with the solution.
I think that's exactly what you're saying, that Dan St. John, our previous guest, was saying that it's the structure that these rehab centers enables each client or each addict to go their own way.
Tailor-made.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's many different rehabs, and I think the most challenging piece is finding a rehab that is, unfortunately, like with a lot of things in the medical community, it's a big industry financially, and so I think that's one of the most challenging pieces is finding a rehab facility that is actually dedicated to helping people.
Wants you to get well, because then you wouldn't be a repeat client in that sense then.
Exactly.
Can I just ask
You're touching on a much larger issue.
Can I just ask you, Carl, were both you, because you're in a relationship with your girlfriend, so I think you mentioned just at the end there that you had to split some dope between the two of you. So would you think if you were on your own, it would have been a harder journey? Or would it have been easier if you didn't have, I think, a kind of like a confidant who was going through the same things?
It's a fantastic question. I think it would have been miserable and more quick, but I think I would have found the solution quicker.
Right.
Because I'll tell you, and I have no problem saying this as a man, like it kind of used to, I used to be worried about this, but it's just like, she was wearing the pants. I mean, she was paying the bills. She was working 3 jobs, because I couldn't hold a job, and I was at home using up all the dope, and she would come home and, so like it was absolutely, I mean, it would have been a lot harder because I had never lived without the cushion of my parents. And then when my parents removed themselves from my life, rightfully so, then I just treated her like my parents as my financial backing. And so without that, I don't know, I may have gone to rehab at that time, or I may not have. I don't know. But it would have been a lot harder, and I think I would have come to a lot quicker. But, it's always
and Carl, are you still with your partner?
No.
Okay.
We split up because it was that relationship was fueled off of nothing but drugs and sex. That was the whole premise of it, and we were confidants. We were going to do a Bonnie and Clyde thing, if you will,
Okay. But that was Midwest. I suppose Colorado, not too far.
Yeah, that's what we were doing. And so the cool thing about this, so I love sharing this, is that we don't speak really hardly at all, but we're not on bad terms.
Okay.
Like I don't have to worry about avoiding her. Because through this process I got to make things right with her. And I think that's the coolest part about this.
Kyle, just lastly, 1 or 2 questions. We've touched quite deeply in the negatives of your life as well from the past. Tell us about the positives now, of where you are now and what the future is looking like.
Fantastic. I think it's great question. Thank you. The positives today is, I want to first and foremost state that I could never keep a substance out of my body for more than 2 hours. And as of August 4th of this year, I have celebrated 7 years.
Wow. Well done.
So, I mean, I think that speaks to, itself. But I will say the positives of today, one thing I was never able to do was get a good night's sleep without the mind just torturing me. Now today, I can go to bed with a clear head.
Sleep like
I think it's one of the great, and wake up not tired. That's one of the worst things ever. I think the other positive thing today is that I'm able to hold a job. I've been at the same company and I'm starting to elevate, and I've been there for 5.5 years.
Wow.
You know, in a company I really like.
And there was a time when you in 4 months you lost what, 3 jobs?
3 jobs. Yeah, exactly. And you know, today, you know, I am responsible for paying all my own bills, and I am also pursuing my passion in gaming and esports content creation, which is something that I've always loved. And so, for a hopeless drug addict like me to have his own place, to take care of, you know, I have a dog I get to take care of, to being not only being able to hold a position, but set a good, like, to be an example. I mean, I think if I can touch on the most valuable piece, because it gives me chills, so I know this is the right thing, is that I thought prior to coming into, you know, prior to getting sober, I had no purpose in life. I genuinely thought, you know, with every fiber of my being, that I was put on this earth to be an example of what not to do. And I believed it, right? And that's the sad piece. But today, you know, I actually get to help take men through the process of recovery, you know, or you know, the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous, and I get to watch the light bulb come on.
And then
I get to be there.
That's the beauty of life as well, where you go through that. You've unfortunately had to go through that experience, but now you're able to help others get through that.
I'm useful.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm useful to people that not many other people can truly help. You know, and so I think that is a valuable piece, and I actually have a purpose where I get to be of service to people, you know, regardless of where they are in their recovery journey. And that's the foundation, you know. And so I'd say there's a lot of positive things happening, but that is always remain constant no matter what struggle of life I go through. Is that, you know, it's funny how God works, is that when I'm usually struggling the most is when someone needs the most help, and it takes me out of my own element. It takes me out of my own head, and it allows me to think of someone else for once. You know.
Well, you know, we're coming to the end of our show, but thank you very much for joining us, and you know, kind of like you know, letting us be a part of your journey and your continued journey of 7 years and counting, Kyle.
Yeah, and Kyle, we really do hope and pray that you can continue on to further achievements, and of course to fulfill your wishes of life as well. And thank you very much for coming on. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you for reaching out, guys. I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much.